It's just past midnight in Jacksonville, Florida, and a mother is standing outside a Walmart, shaking, trying to get a phone to work. She's not calling for a ride. She's calling because her 8-year-old daughter walked off with a stranger a few hours ago, and now she can't find her anywhere. 9 hours before that, none of this seemed possible. It was just an ordinary evening. A tired mum, 3 kids, a trip to buy some clothes. By the time the sun came up, it would be one of the most devastating cases Jacksonville had ever seen. And looking back, almost every piece of it could have been stopped years earlier. This is the story of Cherish Perrywinkle. Cherish was born on Christmas Eve, and her mother, Rain, used to say she was the best gift she ever got. By the summer of 2013, Cherish was 8 years old, living in Jacksonville with Rain and her 2 younger sisters. Her parents, Rain and Billy, had split up some time before, and Cherish split her time between them, with a flight to see her dad in California coming up the very next morning. People who knew her described the same kind of kid over and over: funny, a little goofy, always drawing animals, always outside. She'd just learned to ride her bike that summer, and apparently there was no stopping her once she got going. That night, June 21st, 2013, Rain took Cherish and her 2 younger sisters to a Dollar General's store. Money had been tight, and Rain was trying to figure out how to afford new clothes for the kids, including something for Cherish to wear on her flight the next day. She mentioned it, out loud, to an employee in the store. She had no way of knowing that someone nearby was listening. When they walked outside, a man approached them. He introduced himself, said his wife had a gift card, and offered to drive them all to a Walmart to buy the family some clothes. Rain hesitated. You can hear that hesitation later, in her own words, but he kept talking. He mentioned having kids of his own. He said his wife would meet them there. And somewhere in that conversation, her guard came down just enough. They got in his van. At the Walmart, things seemed normal enough, at least on the surface. They shopped for a while. The man's wife never showed up. Hours passed. The kids got tired and hungry, and it was getting close to 10 at night. Rain wanted to pay for what they had and go home, but the man insisted on buying everyone dinner from the McDonald's inside the store first. Cherish ran over, excited about food, and followed him toward the front of the store. Rain stayed back with her other 2 daughters, browsing for just a few more minutes. When she looked up, they were gone. At first, she assumed they'd just gotten ahead of her. Then she realized something. The McDonald's had actually been closed for a while. There was no reason for either of them to still be up there. That's when the store's intercom announced it was closing for the night, and Rain understood, all at once, that something was wrong. She started running through the aisles, calling out for her daughter. Her phone wasn't working. It took almost 40 minutes before an employee handed her a working one, and she finally got through to 911.
911 Robinson. Hi, at Walmart. Winter, I think my daughter's been taken. What do you mean? Taken by a stranger. I can't find her. I met him in today at Dollar General. He saw that I was struggling to buy them some clothes. He drove us here to buy us some clothes, and the only reason I went with him because she said his wife was going to be here.
Okay, and she was last seen with this man?
Yes, he said he was going to McDonald's, and he hasn't been there because the store is closed right now. I had a bad feeling about him.
Okay, how long have you been looking for you? When was the last time you saw your daughter? How long ago?
About half an hour ago.
Okay, ma'am. What's your daughter's name?
Her name's Cherish.
And her last name?
Perrywinkle with the P. I had a strange feeling about him when I first met him, and he took her to the dressing room twice, and I was hoping that she would be okay. And I was looking at the shoes, and I didn't want him to think that I was overly protective. I had a bad feeling. I thought, well, I feel like pinching myself because this is too good to be true. He was giving my 8-year-old too much attention. He wanted her to buy these really tall shoes that were women's shoes, and I told him no. I don't want him to kill her. I should have told him no.
If you listen to that call, what stands out isn't panic. It's a mother trying to hold herself together while explaining, almost apologetically, that she'd trusted a stranger. She tells the dispatcher she'd had a bad feeling about him from the start. She mentions he'd taken Cherish to a dressing room more than once. She says she didn't want to seem overly protective. She says more than once that she should have said no. It's a hard call to listen to, because you can hear a mother second-guessing every small decision that, in hindsight, feels enormous. Police arrived about 10 minutes after the call ended, but what happened next is one of the most painful parts of this story. For the first several hours, it wasn't treated as an abduction. It was logged as a missing child case. It would take more than 6 hours for an official Amber Alert to go out. Meanwhile, investigators pulled the store's surveillance footage, and it told a much clearer story than anyone wanted to admit. It showed the man watching the family from a distance the whole time they shopped. It showed him closely tracking Cherish specifically. And it showed the two of them walking out together, getting into his van and driving off the property. Officers, K9 units, and even an air unit searched through the night. They checked motels. They checked addresses tied to known offenders. And finally, around 9 the next morning, police had a name. Donald James Smith, 56 years old, a registered sex offender who had been out of prison for less than a month. A tip from someone watching the news led police to Smith's van.
He's calling about a suspicious van over here.
And how long ago did you see it?
720. Yeah, 720.
It was like that. We didn't say nothing.
We didn't know anything until just now. It's not there anymore, but we don't know if he dumped anything because we heard a girl just got abducted from Walmart.
All right, and you said it's now gone?
Yes, ma'am.
But you think he may have, just in case, he might have dumped something?
Right, we don't know, but just in case, it looked suspicious because it was all the way to the back.
When they pulled him over, he stepped out soaking wet, his clothes stained, with items from Walmart scattered around him.
Step out of the vehicle, face away from us. Keep your hands in the air. Stop.
One of the responding officers, a K9 handler named Charlie Wilkie, looked at the state of Smith's clothing and said something no one wanted to hear out loud. That this girl was in the water. Just 20 minutes later, following a tip about the same van being seen near a church, officers found Cherish's body in a creek behind that building. She had been assaulted and killed.
The little girl's body was found in an unnamed church. A sheriff's office spokesperson says Smith was taken into custody Saturday morning after officers surrounded. She'll say the little girl's body was found in an unnamed church. A sheriff's office spokesperson says Smith was taken into custody Saturday morning after officers surrounded his van.
Smith was recently released from jail in late May. He reportedly has several previous arrests dating back to 1977 when he was convicted of assaulting a child under the age of 16. WLTV reports investigators are now transitioning the way they're handling the case from an abduction investigation to a murder investigation. For Newsy, I'm Logan Tittle.
In the interrogation room, Smith said almost nothing. He asked for a lawyer and largely stayed quiet.
Do answer questions. You have the right to stop answering questions at any time. Consult a lawyer. You understand that? This is an investigation of the abduction and murder of a
Cherish Perrywinkle.
Yeah, 8-year-old female. We'd like to ask you questions about it. You want to talk to us?
No.
Okay.
But later, in a recorded phone call with his own mother, he couldn't stop talking. and slowly, without meaning to, he confirmed pieces of what the surveillance footage had already shown.
I know Walmart has more cameras than a bank. You're crazy. There's no way in this world. No way. I'm done with that.
He admitted he'd been using drugs and drinking that day. He described Cherish following him, trying to get in his van, and said he panicked. He never once said he was sorry. To understand how someone like this ended up alone with a child in the first place, you have to go back much further than that one night. Donald Smith's history with the law stretched back to 1977, when he was first convicted of assaulting a child. Over the following decades, there were more arrests, an attempted kidnapping case involving 2 teenage girls in 1992, and a 2009 case where he was accused of impersonating a social worker to get close to a 10-year-old girl. That case was charged as a misdemeanor, which meant, under Florida law, it didn't trigger the kind of review reserved for felony offenders. Here's the part that's hardest to sit with. Back in 1999, before his release from an earlier sentence, state evaluators had already flagged Smith as someone likely to reoffend, dangerous enough to be considered for indefinite civil commitment, a legal process reserved for the small number of offenders considered too high risk to release. He was sent to a treatment facility, but for reasons that were never fully explained, the jury responsible for deciding his fate never heard about those original concerns. He was eventually released. 3 weeks before he approached Cherish and her family outside that Dollar General, Donald Smith had just finished meeting with police, a routine check-in required of registered sex offenders. Everything, on paper, was in order. Cherish's funeral drew an outpouring most people in Jacksonville still remember. Hundreds attended. Nearly 2,000 people signed the guest book. Neighbors who'd never met the family showed up with groceries, just wanting to help in whatever small way they could. In the weeks that followed, the state removed Cherish's 2 younger sisters from their parents' custody, citing concerns unrelated to the crime itself. What followed was a long, painful custody battle that stretched on for years, ending with the girls eventually being adopted by a relative overseas.
Mother of murder victim Cherish Perrywinkle in court, fighting to get her 2 youngest children back. Tonight, for the first time since the state took custody of the girls, their father is speaking out.
I'm the daddy. I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to do everything I can to take care of them and be their daddy.
Today, Judge David Gooding held a hearing to begin deciding the girls' future. They've been in state custody for the past month. At one point during the proceedings, attorneys for the state and attorneys for the children made a routine request to have the judge ask Rain Perrywinkle to submit to a drug test. The judge agreed. After the hearing, she went to the drug testing room in the courthouse for the test. The results were not disclosed, but attorneys for the state say the last time she was tested, she passed. Tonight, only on 4, the girl's father spoke with Haley Winslow and said how much he misses his daughters. Haley's joining us now with this interview. Haley?
Aaron Pearson says life without his little angels is painful.
I've never been without them. I've never been in one day without them. It's very, very hard. Very hard. Yeah, I think about them every day. You know, their pictures on my phone. It's very hard.
But he understands why the state has stepped in.
DCF and these agencies, they just want to make sure that we've gotten ourselves together and that we're on the right track to be able to take care of our children. And that's their job, and I'm going to cooperate with whatever they ask me to do.
Pearson says the Department of Children and Families has asked him to get a 2-bedroom apartment, and until he can, he'd like his 5- and 6-year-old girls to live with their grandfather.
They've known my dad all their life, and they're comfortable with him. And I would like them to be, you know, with him, obviously, until I do what I have to do to get them.
And if he's allowed to bring Nevaeh and Destiny home, he promises to share them with Rain Perrywinkle.
If I were to get custody of the girls, I would definitely never, ever keep them from their mother. You know, girls have to have their mommy, and I would never keep them from her.
By 2017, 4 years after Cherish's death, Rain was still fighting for her 2 youngest daughters, Destiny and Na, who had been placed in state care shortly after the murder. The girl's guardian at the time said something publicly that landed hard, that Rain had, in fact, been given a chance to get her daughters back. The state had laid out a case plan, steps she needed to complete to regain custody. According to the guardian, she hadn't met them. With no other path forward under the law, the state moved to put the girls up for adoption. Not long after, they were adopted by a relative living in Australia, Cherish's older sister, who had been fighting from overseas to keep them in the family. Rain saw it differently. She maintained she was their mother, that she'd raised them from day one, and that losing them was never really about ability. It was about a system that had already decided quietly that it knew better. She kept visitation for a while, 2 hours a week, supervised. Then even that ended. It's a hard thing to hold 2 truths at once, that a mother had already lost 1 daughter to a stranger's cruelty, and that the state believed she couldn't be trusted with the 2 she had left. Neither version makes the other less true. It's just what was left of the story, after the headlines about Cherish had already moved on.
Destiny and Nevaeh Perrywinkle are now living in Australia, and these are her new parents.
Going to Australia, starting a new life with family, that's the best thing for them.
Patricia Parker says after Rain Perrywinkle didn't complete a case plan to get her kids back, the state had no choice but to place the kids up for adoption. She says they typically seek family members, which worked out in this case. But Rain is furious and hurt.
I am their mother. I would die for them. I don't care what anyone says. I'd go without for my children. And there's just so much that's not being said right now.
Rain says she hasn't spoken to her sister in years and believes the only reason her sister and husband got married was to take the kids away from her.
If you can't take care of your children, would you rather your children be in foster care or with family?
Perrywinkle says she wasn't given a fair opportunity to prove her ability to take care of the girls. She says the last time she saw them was during visitation last March. She says she told them she would continue fighting to get them back and feels she was shut out of the process when she lost her parental rights.
I wish they would just feel for one day what they've done to me. And it's not all about myself. Cherish is the biggest victim in this, okay? She is the biggest victim. But because I'm her mother and I'm the adult, I'm the one that has to do these interviews. I'm the one that has to go to court hearings. But Destiny and Nevaeh Perrywinkle, they're victims in this too.
Nearly 5 years after Cherish's death, Donald Smith finally stood trial in early 2018. By then, evidence had piled up for half a decade, but nothing about walking into that courtroom made it feel any less raw. Prosecutors opened by reminding the jury exactly who they were there for. An 8-year-old girl, taken from everything familiar to her, who did not die a quick or easy death. They told the jury this case would leave a mark on them, and they meant it. Rain was the state's first witness.
What did he say to you when you walked out the front door of the Dollar General?
If you really want that dress, I'll get it for you. He got snappy with me because I wouldn't get in the van. I quickened my pace and I looked through every aisle at the register. There was no one there.
Could you find Cherish?
Well, I felt foolish after that. I thought I was just being paranoid.
Ma'am, when your daughter followed after this defendant towards McDonald's, was that the last time you ever saw your daughter alive?
Yes.
She walked the jury through that night step by step. How Smith had offered to buy Cherish a dress. How he'd gotten short with her when she hesitated to get in the van. How she'd quickened her pace through the store, checked every aisle, found no one at the register. She admitted on the stand that she'd told herself she was probably just being paranoid. And she confirmed the hardest fact of all, that watching Cherish walk off toward the McDonald's was the last time she ever saw her daughter alive. Smith's own defense attorney had planned to cross-examine her. But partway through, Smith stopped his own legal team and told them not to. He said Rain had already been through enough. It was one of the only moments in the entire case where he showed anything resembling restraint. More witnesses followed. The officer who'd pulled Smith over and later found Cherish's body described that day in plain, unembellished terms.
But just the look on his face kind of confirmed what the physical evidence was telling me. There was tire tracks there that we believed came from the van. I could see a tree that was laying on its side. I walked over to the water. From what I could see up underneath the trunk of the tree was Cherish laying on her left side, and she was facing away from me, and her hair was kind of floating in the water.
The medical examiner, Dr. Valerie Rao, took the jury through the autopsy findings using photographs entered into evidence. At one point, while explaining what she'd found, she had to stop and ask for a short break. She wasn't the only one in the room who needed it. Several jurors were visibly shaken as well.
And what I'm going to direct your attention now to States 84 and ask you to explain to the jury what is reflected here.
On the left side of her scalp, right there.
And how is that caused, Dr. Rao?
Blunt trauma.
I'm going to show you 2 more photographs of the dissection taken of Cherish Perrywinkle's throat. Will you first tell the jury what you saw when you dissected her throat?
Yes, so what we do is, I'm sorry, I have to take a break. Can I just have like 5 minutes?
Do you want a 5-minute break? I think we'll all take a break for 10 minutes. Thank you.
When it came time for the defense to make their case, they didn't call a single witness. They didn't even give a closing argument. Legal observers following the trial said it looked less like a defense of innocence, and more like an acknowledgement that guilt was never really in question. The only thing left to fight for was what happened next. It didn't take long.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's my understanding the jury has reached a verdict. Is that correct?
In the Circuit Court of the 4th Judicial Circuit in Port Duval County, Florida, case number 16, 2013, State of Florida versus Donald James Smith, verdict count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. We further find the killing was premeditated. We further find the killing was done during the commission or attempted commission of a felony to a kidnapping and sexual battery. Verdict count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of kidnapping as charged in the indictment. Verdict count 3, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of sexual battery upon a person less than 12 years of age as charged in the indictment. So say we all done at Jacksonville, Duval County, Florida. Signed the 4th person, February 14, 2018.
After less than 20 minutes of deliberation, the jury came back with a unanimous verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of kidnapping, guilty of sexual battery on a child under 12. That verdict only settled half the question. In Florida, the next decision was whether Smith would spend the rest of his life in prison or be sentenced to death. More testimony followed, including from a woman named Kerry Ann, who described years earlier narrowly escaping an attempted kidnapping by Smith when she was just 13. Her testimony made it clear this wasn't an isolated moment of loss of control. It was a pattern that had simply gone unchecked.
I was so afraid I was going to fall out and he was going to find me. He said, I know you're in there, you little bitch, and I'm going to find you.
In the end, the jury unanimously agreed the aggravating factors were proven beyond a reasonable doubt and recommended death.
Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Donald James Smith, should be sentenced to death.
The judge who handed down the sentence told Smith plainly that he had forfeited not just his right to live among others, but his right to life altogether.
It's overwhelming. It's like I never thought this day would come, and now it's here, and now I'm just stumped for words. I just wish Cherish was here to see it. I want to strengthen laws keeping predators locked up where they should be, so they don't have the chance to keep getting out, to murder children, to lure parents such as myself that were naive that day, that I wasn't thinking straight. I had 3 little children. I was by myself. I had no clue he was a predator. He was let out for 21 days before he did this. The police knew who he was. We as a community did not know who he was.
No, it's not justice. The legal system works the way it works. But he's been living for 5 years after the death of my daughter. And he's going to be living until the death penalty is either done or whatever the case may be. And that's not justice. She didn't get that option to live those many years.
Rain stood among supporters, facing down anti-death penalty protesters, telling them this wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure a man like Smith never had the chance to walk free and do this again. Billy, Cherish's father, said it was a relief, but not the kind that brings peace. Just the quiet, exhausted end of one very long chapter.
Out. It ends now. Thank you, everyone, for your support. I couldn't have done it all without you. This is for Cherish and other victims. Other victims out there. The Bible says an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
The case didn't end there. In 2021, Florida's Supreme Court upheld the conviction on direct appeal. Smith took it to the U.S. Supreme Court, which declined to hear it. In 2023, a decade after Cherish's death, his new legal team was granted a hearing to argue that his original trial lawyers had failed him, a claim a judge rejected in 2024. Even after that, the appeals continued.
Perrywinkle watched as her daughter's killer, Donald Smith, entered the courtroom. One of Smith's original lawyers, Julie Schlatt, spent the most time on the stand taking questions on jury selection and why she did not advise Smith to take a plea deal instead of going to trial.
We certainly knew, as Mr. Smith did, that we were not going to be successful in being in guilt phase. Correct. But it was also
rather than expressing remorse and trying to take responsibility, his decision is to go to trial.
Yes.
Smith's defense argued that the original jury members were not thoroughly vetted. This because during jury selection, one candidate in a questionnaire had answered yes to if she formed her own opinion about Smith's guilt, but she later crossed out the answer and put no.
It just looked like a simple mistake, and she came across as a decent juror, and we went with it.
So you never asked?
I don't believe we did ask.
During the initial trial, Schlatt and Fletcher did not cross-examine Cherish Perrywinkle's mother. Today, they defended that decision, saying it was Smith who made that request.
This was definitely a case, if we were going to be successful, we were going to have to get hopefully one or more jurors to believe in Mr. Smith. Me fighting with Miss Perrywinkle was not going to move that in our direction at all.
It was also revealed in court today Smith wanted the court process to last as long as possible.
As recently as December 2025, Smith's case was back in front of the Florida Supreme Court, this time over whether his lawyers had properly handled his defense during the sentencing phase of the trial. As of now, Donald Smith remains on death row. Legal experts following the case say the appeals process could realistically continue for years longer, possibly not reaching a final conclusion until close to what would have been Cherish's mid-20s. For a family already living with the worst thing that could happen to them, that means the case never really closes. It just keeps reopening a little, every few years. There's no tidy way to end a story like this, and it wouldn't be honest to try. But a few things about what happened to Cherish are worth sitting with, not as blame, but as something we can actually learn from. First, trust your instincts, even when they're inconvenient. Rain herself has said she felt uneasy more than once that night and pushed the feeling aside because she didn't want to seem overly cautious. That instinct isn't paranoia, it's information. Second, public, crowded places feel safe, but they aren't automatically safe. Predators often count on exactly that assumption, staying physically close to kids during transitions, checkouts, exits, quick errands, matters more than it seems like it should. Third, systems can fail quietly, long before anyone notices. A flagged risk that a jury never heard about. A charge that missed a felony threshold by a technicality. These aren't dramatic failures. They're small, procedural ones. And they add up. And finally, closure, in cases like this, rarely arrives the way we want it to. Years after a verdict, after appeals, after headlines fade, families are often still waiting. The very least we can do, as an audience, is remember that the story doesn't end when the cameras leave. For the people who lived it, it never really does.